All right. We're here in Franklin, Tennessee at the All In headquarters. And I've got a very special guest with me today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. It's a friend of mine here that I met, this year. It's been a great year of meeting people. And this guy's name is Felipe Mejia. And a lot of you guys out there know him in this Nashville area. Felipe went to high school here. He's an investor. He's 32 years old, an entrepreneur. He inadvertently actually started his real estate journey at the age of 18 by house hacking a mobile home during college. And after the door to a career in law enforcement shut, he began researching avenues for other things, like in real estate. For 2 years, he spent countless hours educating himself, self-taught on how to invest in real estate while he operated his own moving company. So he had a moving company going. Within 2 years, at the age of 30, he had acquired financial freedom with 10 rental properties. And to date, he has over 78 rental units. I remember when we met in the summer, he had about 72. So he's continuing to go even in this market. We're going to learn about that. But he started teaching others how to reach their financial goals with real estate through a mastermind called the Inner Circle. Felipe also co-founded REI Call Center, which services over 100 real estate investors nationwide professionally with professionally trained cold callers to find off-market deals. So he's got a killer team over there that helps a lot of investors. He's married, loves traveling with his family, learning to golf. He's got a 5-year-old son. His 10-year goal, really cool one, is to create 100 millionaires. Will you be one of those 100? Welcome, Felipe.
Dude, what's
and
up,
you're a native
man?
Nashvilleian like me, right?
Yeah, I think there's 4 of us left.
That's right. So I went to where'd you went Laverne? Is that where?
No, so I actually went to Antioch High School.
Oh, Antioch. Okay.
Yeah, I went to Antioch High School. And then in 10th grade, I was kicked out.
Oh, wow. You want to talk about that?
We can get into whatever you want, man. There's a lot.
If you want to share, I mean, that's obviously,
what can I and can I not say on this podcast?
I mean, gosh, when someone makes it, and we can say if you own, 78 rental properties in my book, you may, but that's a cool story. So because that's probably a lowish point, if you get kicked out of school, it's not the greatest day, right?
So
what'd you learn from that?
So my parents got divorced like 3 years before that. And that really affected me. It really bothered me. I definitely thought I was going to be one of those, like people talked about divorce and I was like, oh, that'll never happen to me. Like that's like my friends are getting divorced or their family or whatever, right? That'll never happen to me. So I went into high school, just completely destroyed. I was like, man, something's not right. Like, I don't know, not what I had expected going to high school. Hung out with the wrong crowd, basically got caught selling dope, got kicked out in 10th grade and went to an alternative school. So I don't know who's heading up the metro schools of putting all the bad kids in one school at an alternative school in downtown Nashville. Just doesn't seem like the best idea. I feel like I learned how to do more bad things there than it helped. But the one thing that did come out of that was I met a teacher. His name is Mr. Wiley. He's actually still here in Nashville. And he introduced me to Christianity, introduced me to the faith, introduced me to church, things that I had known about but never really followed through with anything. And he really poured into me for that year when I was in alternative school. And ultimately, once I was out of alternative school, I was there for a year, metro schools wouldn't take me back. So technically, you're just either dropped out or you have to find a private school or you have to find a different ways to get educated, but you can't go back to metro schools. And he found me a Christian school in Antioch that would take me to finish my school, which was Lighthouse Christian over on over off Blue Hole. And I graduated there. Great experience. And that really changed kind of my life, the course of the life that I was going on. So a huge shout out to Mr. Wiley. He's out there. I'm sure he'll hear it.
Well, my little cousin Lindsay went there. We'll have to talk off camera if you may know her. She's maybe 35 or something like that. So anyway, so talk about how you got started. I mean, you've done a lot. So talk about the audience is varied. We're going to have folks out there that are, your peers, our peers that are blowing and going, folks that we meet at REI, network. And, but there's also going to be people out there that just kind of, I get a lot of calls. I know you do, like, hey, what's a good side hustle right now? What would you do? And you're not a wholesaler. Let's get that out. Because that's probably the number one thing that people would say is the thing to do or whatever out there is kind of the common thing. But but you have a different strategy. I would say different than everyone else, but your strategy is not wholesaling. You like to do it a certain way. Talk about that.
Yeah, you mean how I'm finding my deals?
Yeah. Well, and then like what's your strategy? You're a buy and hold guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually use the wholesale, what people are thinking about method to find my deals. But I don't wholesale everything, and I wouldn't consider myself a wholesaler. I use marketing to find houses and off-market deals. So I use a cold caller to find me off-market deals, or even on market. Like either way, I analyze deals a bunch of different ways. I think a lot of mistake that investors or even new investors make is they look at a deal through the lens, just one lens, right? They're just like, oh, this deal does not fit this criteria, so it's not a deal. I view every house that's for sale has an opportunity for something. It's either going to be a wholesale, a flip, a buy and hold, a BRRRR, a Airbnb. It's going to be something. You just have to know how to analyze based on different lenses. My investing is pretty simple. I look at it as pretty simple. Basically, I find single family homes that have basements the same size as the upstairs. So if the upstairs is, let's say, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot house up top, then the basement, I like to buy the same thing. The basements are typically empty. They're either 1 or 2 car garage with nothing on the other side. It's just storage space. So I've always thought of it as wasted space. And I'll stop right there and I'll get back to why I see it this way. So when my parents got divorced, if you're following the story, my parents got divorced when I was younger. The judge actually had told my mom that the kids were going to split up into either foster, because my dad was just left. But she financially couldn't sustain the family. There was 3 of us. She didn't have a job. In our culture, not that it's right or wrong, but in our culture, basically the women are homemakers, if you will, right? Like that's basically kind of what it is. Again, not that it's right or wrong. It's just what it is. Mom didn't have a job, really, you could say. So the judge was like, unless you come up with your mortgage payment, we have to take the kids away. So what my mom did was, with the divorce money that she did get, instead of buying, I don't know, a car, or even just like buying us groceries, like I guess most people in that situation probably would, she converted our basement into 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen. And what she did was she rented it out to construction workers that were here in Nashville working, and she came up with her mortgage. That's how she came up with her mortgage. So she house hacked, basically, before it was cool and trendy, and showed the judge that she could sustain. So the judge awarded her the house, awarded her the kids. So real estate saved our lives. I don't think I've ever said that on a podcast. So real estate literally saved our family dynamic. And that is why and how I invest that way, because now I see the power. And I was like, oh, Mom, why did you stop doing it? Why didn't you do another one? And she's like, well, obviously I was just in survival mode, right? She didn't have the means to keep doing more. She goes, but since the divorce, like we've never paid a mortgage payment. Even to this day, she still house hacks. So that's why and how I invest the way I do. And obviously now I have 78, 79 units running basically the same way. About a third or a little bit more of my portfolio is run that way.
So in the very, very beginning, that's, well, I'll ask that in a second, but like, I mean, that obviously had a major impact. I mean, you're looking at that and it sounds like you almost simplified it down to something very simple that, wow, this worked. Why not do that again? You know, I saw my mom made this work. Why not do that again? So when you did start, was it hard to get started with that first and second, or when did you feel like, or from the very beginning, did you feel like, okay, I got this? Because I know sometimes people, they're looking at their numbers and they mess up. One little thing goes wrong with the house and they feel like, I think a lot of people don't want to get into investing, when I'm saying, my peers, because they've never done it. And so they say, well, gosh, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to have to deal with the things that landlords deal with. So what was that like? What would you say to that person or those folks that feel that way? Because obviously, if you got 78 homes, it's working, right? And I don't necessarily see you're like got a pager on 2 phones on your belt or something like that, right? So you've got people that are handling these things.
Yeah. Well, first I would say to those people that are like, oh, well, I don't want to deal with tenants or I don't want to do that. You better scale quickly, or you better have a lot of money in your back pocket, because this business is not easy and it's not for the lighthearted, I would say, especially at the beginning. Was it easy? No, absolutely not. My first 2 years, I only bought 1 or 2 rentals tops. I used every crutch in the book that I could to excuse the work that I was not doing. So what does that mean? I would go to the bank. They would be like, no, you don't have enough W-2. And I'm like, oh, well, you give everyone else loans. Why don't I have a loan, right? Or is it because of my race? Is it because of my color? Is it because of where I come from? Is it what zip code I grew up in? I tried to make every excuse in the book as to why I couldn't acquire loans. And I think that's a big problem that people have, is this like entitlement mentality. But I realized that no, it's me. I have to look in the mirror. I don't have the credit score. I don't have the income. I don't have all these problems, or I don't have all these like solutions to this problem. So the biggest change that happened for me in real estate was I accepted the no, but I would ask why. So for example, your beautiful wife is behind this camera. If she was my loan officer and I would ask, I'd like to get a loan on this property, and they were like, no, I'd be like, okay, that's fine, but why? I need you to explain to me why.
You just wanted to know.
I just wanted to know why. So they would say, okay, your credit's this, that, and the third. Great. So I'd go fix that. And then I would come back to the bank. Hey, now why not? Well, now because, and eventually they ran out of no's and the bank gave me a loan. And once the door was creaked open, I mean, I busted in and never left. Right. So for me, it was like getting rid of all of my excuses as to why not, and stop blaming the system, stop blaming any crutch that I could think I have. Doesn't matter where you come from. Like I was like, no, color, it does not matter in this. And it was really important for me to say that, because as being Mexican here in Antioch, in the South, in the Bible Belt, I could use any excuse in the book. But it wasn't true. I mean, at the end of the day, anyone can go get a loan if you just, check the boxes that are there, and then just don't stop. Just keep going and keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Was your mom the lighthouse during that whole thing, or did you watch someone else, or was it just you that sort of had that, where you just kind of came to that realization? Was it internal, or did you have someone?
So I think
that
it was
mind shift. So that's a mind shift. That's a mindset shift.
I think it was just running out of excuses. I couldn't yell from the hills loud enough with any of my excuses, and like no one cared. Okay, like sure.
Another day comes and it's still not where you want to be.
It still doesn't right. I could use that energy that I had to, I don't know, try to fight the banks, or use, my lack of certain education, or my lack of whatever excuse you might have. My biggest excuse was race. That was my biggest excuse, right? Like, no, the bank's not giving it to me because I think that they're racist, or I know because I think this or that and a third. And I could not yell it loud enough. It didn't matter. Nothing changed. Why? Because there's certain rules and guidelines that we all have to follow, right? So it doesn't matter what color you are. I had to figure it out. And I would literally spend hours trying to figure out why I couldn't get loans. And one day I just came to the realization I'm wasting my time. Why don't I use that same energy to be bankable? And that was the key. Become bankable. When I figured that out.
What'd you do?
Yeah, great question. So the last thing that the bank told me before I got my next loan was that I didn't have 2 years work history. Because I was in between jobs. I wasn't, I didn't keep a job for a long time. So they're like, you don't have 2 years work history. I was like, so you're telling me if I have 2 years work history, a 720 and a down payment, I can get a house? They're like, you can get anything you want, like if you have the money. I was like, all right, careful what you wish for. So my first deal, my very, very, very first purchase outside with bank financing was a 6-unit apartment complex in Cookeville, Tennessee. Like I didn't go for a single family. I didn't do anything. I went like balls to the wall. What can I get?
Right.
And they were like, so for 2 years I saved up, fixed my credit, got all my cash, and I just bought a 6-unit apartment complex. Now from there, I sold that, got into my why, changed directions, and we can go into that if you want. But once I stopped making excuses, it changed my life. Now I didn't have a mindset shift, or I'm sorry, I had a mindset shift, but I didn't have like a coach teach me or anything like that. Like I went through tears and like fucking breakdowns in my basement. Like I did it to myself, you could say.
Yeah, it sounds like, and you're a believer
really
as well, but it's almost like when you come to the end of yourself.
Yeah, I don't have no more excuses.
Literally, I'm into my own rope. I can't. There's nothing else. I mean, what do I do? Cry out to God and
that's it.
Try to educate.
Lord, why can't I do this? I know I can. I know I should be able to. Everyone else talks about it.
And let's talk about that just for a second. I mean, I know for me, anytime I have been at that moment and I really call out to God, I mean, there has been some sort of a door, some sort of a somebody or something that's come along that's like, and it's when I'm at that. Did you feel that at all? Like, I mean, you're like just at the end, like, I have exhausted everything. I'm butting my head into the wall.
Yeah.
God, what do I do here?
Yeah. There's a bank here in Franklin. I don't have their permission, so I might not say who it is, but there's a bank here in Franklin that I went to. And actually, I'll give a backstory. This is a really cool story. So I was on the construction site sweeping, and I would listen to Bigger Pockets and other podcasts. And I was sweeping the construction sites to make money for my first down payment. Mm-hmm. Like I would do anything I could. I didn't care about liking what I did. I was like, what's going to give me the most amount of money per hour that I can make? And the construction site, the owners were like, all right, we'll give you $300-$400 to clean this construction site. And I can get 4 cleaned in one day with a couple helpers, and I could make $600 on the side. So I was like, okay, I can work 3 hours and make $600 because everyone else is cleaning the other. Anyway, so I was like, okay, this is great. So I'd listen to podcasts and I was sweeping, and I'll never forget, there's a builder out here named Ron Davis and Justin Davis. They're son and dad and son. They do huge construction sites here, and I've cleaned a lot of their properties here in your backyard. And one day he gave me his check. He gave me my check, and he was like, hey, where do you bank at? And I thought that was kind of not intrusive, but I was like, well, I guess it doesn't matter what I tell him. I told him, and he's like, you should bank at this bank and start building a relationship with Miss Regina. There's her name. Yeah. And I was like, relationship. Okay. So like, now that I'm where I'm at, I'm like remembering some of the things that other people have told me. And sure enough, Miss Regina was the first person that gave me my loan. She gave me a 5-year, terrible balloon, terrible terms. Like, it was just a horrible loan. But she gave me my first opportunity. And I'll never forget. She's like, your file's going to sit on my desk. Like, I'm not going to sell it to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Like, I'm going to give you a $250,000 loan. It's going to sit on my desk, and you're going to pay every single month. She was a hard ass. Excuse my language. She was hard on me too. But Ron Davis, the owner of that construction site, introduced me to her. And then like I would try to get loans with her and other banks for the longest time. And eventually she was the one that gave me my first loan. And then I refied later and like got better terms and all this kind of stuff. But she was the one that, like you said, I cried out to God, and I was like, God, why can't I figure this out? Why can't I invest? And, send me that opportunity through Miss Regina with terrible loan terms. But we got the deal done. And from there, I've just been able to keep going.
I mean, a big part, Felipe, what I've always thought when I hear your story is that what really pulls through is you didn't give up. I mean, you refused to give up. And like, there was this time where, you're trying to figure out what to do. You got all these different things going. And I think when you mentioned the thing about the 1 to 2 years, that's the part where I think where people just kind of see the Felipe Mejias on stage, and they're just like, okay, I want to do that. But they want it to happen in six months. And it's hard to do that. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's 1 to 2 years. I mean, like, just about anybody you talk to that's had good success, you hear their story, and it's the first year or two. It's not something that person necessarily wants to jump into. It's not just because it's hard in the beginning, right? It's lean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those first year or two, you're just like, what do I do? I've got income that I need to make, but, it's not working out, so what was it about the real estate? Or just like, I know I can make this work.
Yeah. So number one, the very first thing was my mom. She was able to save our family. Forget the money, forget the status, forget all that crap.
Family.
It was the family. My mom was able to keep our family together through real estate. And I was like, if real estate can do that, like if the government puts that much power on real estate, like there is something there. So that's kind of the realization that I had, that I was like, no, this is where it's at. This real estate is definitely where it's at. It's made the most amount of millionaires, multimillionaires. It helps keep families together. I've seen statistics where people who come from living in a home versus anywhere else that they own just have that much more, capability, potential, statistics, whatever you want to call it, to do better in life, right? Especially if their parents are still together. Now, I didn't have that part, but I did have a home, a single family home, right? And that meant something. So for me, it's more about that than like the money, the status, and all that. Like, I saw that my mom was able to keep our family together because she had one single family. And I was like, well, hell, what am I going to be able to do if I can get 10 of those? What am I going to get 20 of those? Right. She can keep a whole family together with one home. Man, I can't imagine the power of having, a bunch of
Yeah, it's not just, it was more about numbers. It was about, the safety and the security of a home. And then, so like,
I'll say it like this. Let me add one more.
Yeah.
I'll say it like this. My mom came to this country to survive, right? So I saw that. My mom came to this country to survive. She didn't come to thrive. She didn't come to build wealth. She just came to survive. Okay. I was no longer just going to survive because my mom didn't come this far for me to only come that far.
She's passing the baton almost.
She's passing that baton. So for me, it was about me going from surviving to building wealth. And I'll never forget, Ron Davis once told me, Ron Davis, if you guys are following, is the builder who really put me on this path, really really mean guy, older gentleman, but just like raw and real. And I feel like that's a lot of the times what people need but don't want.
Yeah.
He was real to me. And he said these next words. And if you're listening, pay attention to this next part. He literally said to me, Felipe, your family is 100 years behind mine. You'll never catch up working. And I was like, whoa, that's towing a line. What do you mean? Right? And never really got a good explanation, but I've come to the conclusion, for example, his dad was a builder and his dad's dad was a builder. So he's a century or ahead of my family who just came to the country in 1988.
Yeah.
So his dad has been building since, whatever age. And then he's building, and obviously they've had multiple generations of wealth. And my mom came just to survive in 1988, 1987. So I had 100 years of catching up just to get to, does that make sense?
Sure.
So when I saw my mom be able to keep our family together with a single family home, I said, okay, not only do I have to prove Mr. Ron Davis wrong in regards to like that 100 years, I have to get past that. So I was like, okay, if my mom came this far to survive, I need to learn to thrive. So that's what I did with real estate was I'm thriving. And then it's interesting. I asked my mentor, what's next for my son? He's not going to learn to survive. He's not going to learn to thrive. And he goes, no, your son is going to have to learn how to sustain. And I was like, what does that mean? And basically he was telling me like, your mom survived, you grew wealth. Your son's not going to have to learn how to work like you did. Your son's not going to have to learn how to do all that. Your son's going to have to learn how to sustain and multiply what you've already built. Because money is now a growing game for him. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be you're going to hand your son a 10, 15, $20 million portfolio that he doesn't have to work for. His knowledge base is going to be different. He's going to have to learn taxes.
Different skill set.
Yes.
Yeah. Or more fine-honed skill set.
Exactly.
Not that you don't know about taxes, but.
Right. But it's just a different game for him. And I was like, man, that's so true. And he's like, and that's how you catch up quickly.
Oh, amazing.
So that's kind of the full.
So talk about your why. I mean, you said it changed. Mm-hmm. What changed about it? Because that's big for all of us.
Yeah. So if you recall, my very first like real investment was a 6-unit apartment complex in Cookeville. That's where I went to school at. And it was pumping out cash flow, right? Because I read every book, right? I listened to every podcast. Cash flow is the name of the game. But no one talks about like why cash flow or like, is that really what you want? So like, okay, is cash flow good? But if you're no health, is cash flow good, but you're divorced? Is cash flow good, but you're like, what are you willing to sacrifice for that cash flow?
Right. Because some people are debt averse and like, there's still people that just,
yeah.
Just we all were. Yeah. It's just like, you got to pay cash for a home before, don't go into debt. Don't use debt. And
so that's where my head was at. I can't remember that movie. Maybe you'll help me remember, but where Thanos throws his daughter over the cliff to get some stone. What movie was that? Do you remember that?
Yes.
I can't remember. It's one of the, anyways. So Thanos like sacrifices his daughter to get this like stone. And I really felt like that was my cash flow. Like what was I sacrificing for my cash flow? Right.
Right.
And I realized I was cash flowing my time, or I was banking my time for cash flow. Yes, my cash flow was super high. I had an appreciating asset in a college town. Like there was nothing that was going to go wrong with that property. Right. And nothing was going wrong. I was rehabbing. I was raising rents. It was awesome. Everything the books were saying, this was great. 9 months in, I hated it and I never wanted to do investing again. And I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. Something's not right. Now, luckily, this property was 45 minutes to an hour from my house. So when I drove up there, I had a lot of time to think. And I was like, something's not right. Like something doesn't feel right. Well, property manager, like something's not right. And I asked Brandon Turner, I sent him a text and I was like, hey dude, like, just what's going on? I kind of gave him some feedback. And he was like, read this book. And he sent me a book. He sent me or I bought it, I can't remember now. But the book was called Life in Air. And I read it. Have you read Life in Air? You should, it's really good. And basically in the book, I'm not going to ruin it, but basically it talks about like your why over your like cash flow or your goals, right? And I realized that yes, I was making a lot of cash flow on that one rental property, but I was sacrificing my time. So it's like, what did I really want? So long story short, I really wanted my time that book showed me that I really wanted my time. I wanted to be able to do what I want with who I want, when I want, whatever time I want, right? Like day after Thanksgiving, sitting here with you doing a podcast is what I want to do. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right. And I have the capability to do that. I have to go clock in tomorrow. So I sold that apartment complex and luckily in real estate is forgiving. So 9 months it appreciated. The loan got paid down. Plus I had my 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So 3 out of the 4 pillars of real estate I had accomplished. And we'll talk about the 4th one later if you want, but I had the appreciation, I had the loan pay down, and I had the cash flow, and I sold the property, and I took all that and I bought one single family house cash. One. So why would somebody trade a 6-unit apartment complex for a single family home cash? And the reason was, it was my why. So every book you ever read is going to talk about all these metrics and Excel sheets and data points and ROIs and like all this stuff that's important, but no one talks about like the underlying X factor, which is you.
Right.
Like, why are you
your
doing
why
this?
can be different from somebody else's.
Why are you doing this? So I bought that single family house cash, and the cash flow was actually the exact same as the apartment complex, but because I had no debt. So I took that money and bought the house, got it's $2,500 or $2,200 monthly cash flow. And I was like, okay, but a single family home runs a lot easier than a, small multi. I was like, this is awesome. I like this better. I want to do that 79 times. So slowly I created systems and processes where I can run, a larger portfolio now. And then the next thing I did was I took that house back to Regina, the original bank that gave me the first loan. I asked her for a cash out refinance.
Yeah.
Didn't do that. I thought that was the dumbest thing in the world. And I left there basically in tears because she said, I cry a lot. And she basically said, we're only going to give you 70% of what you put in. Now I wasn't smart enough to know, but back then I was like, wait, I just paid 180 for that house and they're only going to give me 120. I just lost 60 grand. That's just the way my mind worked. And so I kept banking and I kept banking. Like a month later, she told me about the line of credit strategy. I guess she just felt bad for me. She's like, this poor little Mexican kid can't figure this out. God, I want to tell him. So she gave me a line of credit on the property, and that's how I've built my portfolio from that one house.
And so
one house is the framework.
And you talk a lot about using lines of credit now on your shorts, on social media.
Yeah.
Because it's really a great way to continue to to snowball it, right?
Yeah.
To snowball your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how many banking relationships do you think someone needs to do it this way, to build up to that? Like you got 70.
Yeah. You need one bad mofo.
That's what you need.
One solid relationship. I have one now. Unfortunately, I don't use Miss Regina anymore. Their banking is, so banks are like restaurants. You're not going to go to McDonald's and order a chicken quesadilla. You know what I'm saying? So you have to but they're also not going to have it on the front. Hey, we sell this product.
Right.
So it's up to you to go find the relationships in those banks. So I finally found the right bank with the right relationships, and I'm getting loans approved in a week, 2 weeks tops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that one good relation. Now, I would say more is important. I would say 2 or 3 would be solid. I don't have that. I have one, but I mean,
it's working out okay.
It's working out okay, but I should probably start building more. I'm not perfect.
But your why, back to the why. I mean, this is, you feel like you have it honed in now. I mean, you have a 5-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about time, I immediately think about him and obviously your wife. And you guys are thinking about adopting. Mm-hmm. So you're obviously thinking forward with that. Like, hey, I don't want to be tied into. So, but you do a lot of mentorship. So now you sort of shifted. You're a teacher. I've noticed that about you. You have a teacher's heart. And so what is it about teaching that you like so much?
Yeah. So if it wasn't for those tough teachers in my life, like Ron Davis, Regina, some of these like world people that have poured into me, I don't think I would be where I'm at, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They were kind of like shortcuts to more learning opportunities that they gave me. And my goal is just to like give that back. Now, coaching and teaching is a two-edged sword. It's really tough. It's kind of like, I'll use an extreme example, like when Trump ran for office, like they dragged his name through the mud, right? He didn't have to do that, right? He's a bajillionaire.
Right.
He didn't have to do that, but he did. It's the same thing with teaching. Like, you're going to put yourself out there. Your name is going to get dragged through the mud. No, your stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So it's a two-edged sword. I mean, you got to have tough skin. If you're doing it for the money, you're not going to do it for long.
Well, the worrying about what people think goes back to just basics 101 in business, right? And getting out there with social media now, like, 5 or 6 years ago, we weren't really I mean, everybody had Facebook, but you
Right.
know, the way people are generating business now with Instagram, with TikTok, you know, YouTube is going bigger than ever. I mean, it's really just not worrying about what people think, right? I mean, I think that holds back a lot of people.
Yeah.
That and just lack of mentorship. You know, you've got, you know, it's really what we're talking about here is mentorship. I mean, you had these people that were in your life that, you know, you didn't necessarily pay, but now there's so much information out there that you don't have to do what Felipe did, guys, to sort of go out, figure it all out on your own. Hey, it's going to be hard, but now you can actually hire someone or find someone that you in your community and just latch onto them and somehow and offer to pay them, offer to do work for them, pro bono to get, I mean, because it's really about the experience. I mean, that's what's invaluable. I mean, so many people you hear about, right, with the jobs or their career and how they started their business, and they just wish they would have started sooner. Yeah, it was hard. They all got a hard story. And, but I just, you know, the only way I was going to learn was to do it. You know, that's a big thing, right? It's just, you have to do it. A lot of us are about talk, but you can talk about it all you want, but until you're better to do it and screw up than to try to make it perfect before you start. Is that how you feel like life is with business?
Oh, 100%. It's funny. The other day we were on one of my mastermind calls and a gentleman brings up a deal and it's his first deal, right? It's his first opportunity. It's first deal. And I had a prior student from a prior coaching session. So I had another mastermind for about 3 years. We just stopped that and I just started over. And I had one of my students come in and talk to my new class. And a gentleman asked a question, hey, I got this deal. I think it's a great deal. The numbers work. Can you run it with me? And he was like, yeah, go ahead. And he goes, okay, so buy it. My student literally, the guy was like, okay, so this, and then my student cut him off and said, buy it. He goes, but I haven't told you anything. He's like, I don't care. Your first one is not about money. Your first one's about lessons that you're going to learn. And you would rather learn those lessons with a small $60,000, $70,000 home than a $70 million deal.
Right.
So the guy didn't even get started. He said, buy it. And he wouldn't let him talk. He said, buy it. He goes, you're literally wasting your time and mine. Buy the deal. He goes, well, what if the numbers don't work? I don't care. He goes, you are going to learn more from taking action on that first deal than anything that your Felipe is going to tell you, anything I'm going to tell you. Hell, even if you lose money, I don't care. He goes, that first deal will change your life. He goes, what you do after that deal will depict your future, but that first one will give you all the lessons that you're going to need to move forward.
Yeah, you just can't. There's so many things, I think, in real estate. It's almost like when you buy your first home, you know, at your first primary. I mean, until you really go through the process, everything's foreign.
Yeah.
I mean, at closings, like no one knows what is a closing. Where do you go? Do we go to your office, the lender's office, the real estate office? And what is a title company? So there's a lot to know. But the cool thing now is that, man, I see more people in this sphere that are really cool that maybe were doing other things and now they've started a business on the side. And these are great people out there in the industry. And I mean, we need more great people like you that are out there, the teachers' hearts, you know, that want to teach other people. So you've got a goal to tell me about that.
Yeah. So my goal is to create 100 millionaires because I know the impact that will have. If somebody like becomes a millionaire, they went through a lot to get there, a lot of lessons, a lot of heartburn, you know, just a lot of impactful things in their life that will, I know will continue to make more impact. Now, for me, when I pass away and I get to heaven, you know, God's going to say, what did you do with the talents that I gave you? And if all I have is a successful family and money, personally, I wouldn't even count that as like, I did what I was supposed to do on earth. For me, it's like, okay, well, what, you know, the Lord gave me the talent to teach. What did I do with that? Right. So this is just a 10-year goal that I've put on myself to create 100 millionaires one at a time by pouring into them and giving back. And if I can do that every 10 years, you know, that however much life, you know, the Lord gives me, I'll continue to have that goal every 10 years, 100 millionaires, 100 millionaires, 100 millionaires every 10 years.
It's legacy is what we're talking about, aren't we? It's legacy. You're leaving a legacy.
Sure.
You're leaving something behind that's beyond you. I mean, if you, you know, if you create other business people, other real estate moguls, and you leave all those behind, I mean, that's you think about the record industry now, it's not just enough to be an artist.
Yeah.
That you open up your own label and you get other artists, right?
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Dre and Eminem and 50 Cent. I mean, and now, you know, you get to kind of do and pick and choose who you work with and so forth when you do that. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot because it gives me a goal. It gives me more than just a financial goal. It's really cool to get text messages like, yo, I just got that line of credit. That's amazing. You weren't joking. Like, I don't have to sell my future. Like, cause like that's one of the things that I impact my students, because they've all read the Burr book, right? Like we don't have to joke around here. Everyone has read those books. And all I see, in my opinion, and it's maybe just because I'm not the smartest, guy in the room, but when you refinance a property, you start over the loan, you sold away 20% of your equity, you have to pay it back with interest. The numbers just don't compute for me. And again, maybe it's just because I don't understand, but I always tell my students, just put a line of credit on your equity, because the moment you refinance, you have a loan to start paying the next month, whether you have a deal or not. You got to start using that money because you're paying interest on it. It's great. It's not taxable. But that's like the only thing I see about it. But with a line of credit, it's also not taxable. But you're not paying any interest on that money until you use it. You're only going to pay interest on what you use. You'll be able to tap into it to buy deals faster. You only buy a deal if the line of credit makes sense with the interest on it. With the Burr, you got to buy something you're paying interest on it day one.
Yeah.
So everyone talks about rent is 100% interest, right? Oh, I can't buy a house right now because interest rates are high. Yeah, but if you're renting, that's 100% interest.
Right.
With a refinance, it's the same thing. That's 100% interest on that money. Whether it's 7%, 8%, you're paying on 100% of your money that you got back. With a line of credit, that's not the way it works. With a line of credit, you're only paying interest on what you use.
Yeah.
And then you just compute those numbers into the next deal that you buy. Okay, so the next deal is going to give me $1,000 cash flow, $500 cash flow. Half of that's going to pay the line of credit. The rest is going to pay the mortgage. There's still $200, $300, or $1,000, whatever. Great, this deal makes sense. And then, right, you just keep doing. I'm still working. I'm paying off my line of credit. This deal works. Eventually, I don't know what it's called, but like the tables will turn, right? And you don't have to work anymore to pay off your line of credit because the cash flow from your portfolio pays off the line of credit. You use the line of credit to keep buying rentals, and boom, you've reached financial independence. That's how I did it with 10 rentals. Just one line of credit has bought me all of it.
Where do you think people get stuck? I mean, because that's not everybody who gets into real estate has a trajectory that just is uninterrupted. Well, and just it's an easy trip, right? It's a path. It's hard sometimes. So what do you see people do? What do they do that mess themselves up in the early years? We talked about being impatient.
Yeah. I think that is huge. I would say that the reason people get stuck, scared, or never start is greed. So in my opinion, the Burr strategy is rooted in greed. I want my money
tell
back
people
now.
that may not know what Burr is.
Burr, okay, so buy a property. Then
it's just an acronym.
It's just an acronym for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yeah.
So I think that that's rooted in greed, which is why it sells so well. Because you can literally tell somebody, hey, you're going to buy this house and you're going to get all your money back for buying it. You're greedy. You just want your money back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. Versus, oh, I'm going to buy this property, but you're going to have access to the money that you put in, but you're not going to get it back. You'll have access to it to use it if you're smart.
It's almost tempering the way you're looking at it. It's tempering you back from just grabbing.
It's really
the money
just like putting bumpers.
Put your hand in a cookie jar.
100%. You have to leave your money in there. And luckily,
that's huge, guys. I don't know if you're picking up on that, but that's, to me, he's set up this it works for him, this way of doing in his business to where, it actually keeps him from being greedy, or it keeps him from making decisions that are outside of what he set up, his life and his business to run on. And so if it operates outside of that, you're like, no, I'm not. So you just set up some rules for my business that you just follow. And that's huge. That's the way life works, right? This is who I am. This is what I do.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people are like, oh, I go to work. I want a certain amount of money for that work.
Right.
So with a Burr strategy, that's how that works. You do put a certain amount of work, you get your money back. It's that work mentality. So you asked me why a lot of people get stuck or never keep going. It's because they spend 2 years like I did investing, and then they see a very minimal return because they've refinanced everything out. So literally they're starting again 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
when you refinance, you're starting over.
Yeah.
For me, I have access to the same amount of line of credit, but my money is still growing. Why? Because I haven't used it. It's just available for me to use. The loan is still getting paid down at its original, but I still have access to this equity. So it just continually grows exponentially faster, where I've never had to restart, if that makes sense. So a lot of people run out of money because they put in 100,000, let's say, on a deal. They refinance 80. Once they do 4 of those, what happens? The 100,000 is gone because you got to pay 20, 30% every time.
Yeah.
So you put in 100,000, you get back 80. You put in 80, you get back 60. That money runs out. And then 2 years down the road, they're like, oh, great, I got 5 rentals, cash flowing $200 on each. Why? Because you refinanced everything. All your cash flow is gone. You get one expense and you've just spent all 2-3 years worth of cash flow. So you're literally at zero, but you have 5 rentals. But then, and this is huge, is what I tell my students, this is huge. You are just a glorified property manager for the bank. The bank has worked their system on you the way they want to, where you are managing assets for them, that the moment that you fail, they're going to take it. And they want you to fail. You are just a glorified property manager for your assets. I, on the other hand, am a 60-40, 50-50 partner with my bank, right? Because I have access to that extra 50% of equity, but I'm not paying interest on it. The bank loves and hates me, right? The bank takes me out to dinner. They're like, how's business, Felipe? And how's everything going? Everything's good, right? Right? With a refinance, the bank controls 80% of your asset. You control 20%. And they're like, okay, like, that's fine. Nothing's going to happen to me. So in my opinion, that's what I teach my students. I'm like, stop selling your future wealth away. I leverage my future wealth. That's something I can control, because the moment I don't want to use it, I'm not paying interest on it.
Have you noticed, I know it was this way when I grew up, and I wonder if it was how you grew up, but debt was bad. I mean, like I was
huge. Yeah.
Dave Ramsey, I was huge fan, still am. I mean,
he's like an exit away from you.
Yeah, he's like an exit away. And still listen to Dave sometimes. But you know, early on when you're in your 20s, there's this message that gets there, and particularly if your parents maybe said this message, but it's basically just save your money, stay out of debt. And I think it's important to where what Mr. Davis said to you that time, hard as it was to hear, I think what I hear he's saying there is it's what we hear now. People just come out with it, that you can't save your way to wealth. And I think that's a new thing. Like, oh, well, gosh, I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing, right? I thought we're supposed to save our way to wealth, but it doesn't really work that way, right? Because what he's saying is leverage, like get those homes, get things that are cash flow producing. But that's contrary to what people, I mean, it takes just getting past that. If you're just coming out of high school, coming out of college, you know, never go to those schools or whatever, because you're just trying to make it in the world. And all of a sudden now, you're like, well, wait a minute, borrow money? I thought I was supposed to save 20%, but it's amazing that, and I feel responsible to tell people about this. Like there's still people out there that think you got to save 20% down to buy my primary, or, you know, you can get an investor to help you on, you don't have to have 20% down always, dude. There's lots of ways to buy an investment property. You can bring on a partner.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative ways to get that 20% down. Personally, I teach my students, don't take shortcuts. So I don't know if it's contrary to what you teach, but I say, no, don't buy that property until you have 20%. You haven't earned it yet. You don't deserve it. You don't own it. It's not you. Quit borrowing money. Go make that 20%. It's going to be worth it. These calluses on my hands will never go away. This broom that I've pushed for 8 years, this will never go away. That broom sucks, but this is my 20% on my whole portfolio. I have a $10 million portfolio. I own about half of it. Because I've put 20% down on a lot of it. Now I'm getting even more creative, where not only do I put 20% down, I got to buy 20% deep. So day one, I want 60% to be, 40% to be equity, 60% bank. So I tell my students, they're like, oh, well, I'm not gonna have 20% for 6 months. So yes, wait, earn it, go. And this is how I do that. I'm like, what does your day look like? Well, I woke up at 9, I worked till 5, and then I got home. Great. So you still have 4 hours to go Uber, wash cars, I can sell your feet on OnlyFans. I don't care what you're doing, but go find that 20%. Don't be lazy. Yeah. My mom worked from like 9 to 9.
Yeah.
So when someone gives me an excuse, I'm like, my mom didn't speak English. She didn't have documents, and she still made it. I don't care for your bullshit excuse of why I can't get 20%.
Yeah.
Unless you literally have like where you can't get out of bed, there is no reason why you can't do this. So I tell everyone, get 20% or you don't deserve that property.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that are entitled. They're like, oh, I can borrow the 20% and then borrow the 80%. I'm like, you have no skin in the game. You don't care if that property produces or not.
Right.
You don't care what's going on. You put 20% of your money in there, you're going to know the weight of every drop in the bucket that you had to carry.
I see what you're
Does that
saying.
make sense?
I mean, yeah, because
So I teach my
they're
students, don't
invested.
borrow
They're
the 20%.
invested emotionally, you know. And when you're invested financially, you're invested emotionally, or invested, you know.
Exactly. So I tell them, don't do it.
Mentally.
I say, get the 20%, figure out a way, and then you deserve to buy that rental, and you'll never regret that. You will never regret that 20% because that asset's going to keep growing. You're going to be able to leverage it, and you're not losing that 20%. It's just in bank account 123 Main Street. It's just not at, you know, Wilson down the road anymore. Now it's at bank account, that address of that house. That's what I tell people. Get the 20%. Now I teach people how to find off-market deals so they get 40%, 20% off the purchase. Or I'm sorry, 20% off the ARV, 20% of down payment. Bank does 60. You're in a great position.
Yeah.
You'll be able to pull a line of credit 90 days after you close. You re-leverage that for the next one, and then you hit the ground running. You never stop. So that's how I teach my students. You got to have 20 to 40% in the deal, and then just re-leverage that toward more.
So somebody out there, they're thinking, man, this sounds, I like this guy. Yeah, this guy.
I don't know about
this
that.
guy.
I get
This
a lot
guy.
of
This
people that
guy
don't
like
like
this
me.
guy, and I can see why you'd like this guy. But somebody out there saying, "Hey, man, I'm thinking, I'd like to hire this guy as a mentor. What do they need to do? How do they reach you?"
Yeah, basically my social media, Felipe Mejia, REI. They can send me a DM. The only place that I really coach is Inner Circle, my mastermind. And it's funny because my mastermind is like super cheap. It's like $200 a month. And we do like 7 or 8 Zoom calls, 4 that I do individually by myself. And then 3 or 4 more that I bring specialists in to come talk.
And guys, just write down in the caption here, you're going to find all of Felipe's contact info, how to reach out to him. REI call center, though.
Yeah.
Let's not leave that guy out. So this is a new business or newer business that you've added on to your main business, and talk about what REI call center is and how it helps people.
Yeah.
And then how you make money out of that.
Yeah.
It's a win-win-win.
It definitely is a win-win. I definitely make money off it. Don't
You're
get it
employing
twisted.
a lot of people, putting a lot of people to work, getting more deals done,
Yep.
helping people, you know, get out of a bad situation. Talk about what it does.
So if you're listening and you've listened to the whole podcast and you do the math, at some point I do run out of money because I'm high equity in my portfolio, but I eventually do run out of 20% down. There's only so much time that I can work to make 20% down. So I ran out of money, but I had high equity, leveraging lines of credit. Eventually, it doesn't matter how you cook it or how you chop up it. I'm gonna run out. So I realized that the reason I was running out is because I was putting 20% down, buying on market deals, not off market. And what that basically means is going direct to a seller. So the owner. So let's say that you own a house. I call you, hey Mark, I'm interested in buying your property. It's worth $200,000, but I'll give you $160. There's a hardship there while you have to sell. So you sell to me for $160. I take it to the bank. The bank then gives me 80% of 160, I got to bring 20%. So let's say they gave me 100,000 or 120, I got to bring in 20, whatever the math works out. Now I have a large amount of equity in the property. So I was like, okay, the reason I'm running out of money quickly is because I'm buying on market 20% down. I need to buy off market to get that additional 20 to 30% off. Then the loan plus my 20% gives me a large stake. I need to be able to get into my money quickly, not have to wait 6 months. I want to be able to get a line of credit 2 months after I get the loan. So I had to find a way to go direct to seller.
So how'd you find it?
So what I did was I had 2 cell phones and I pulled a list from propstream.com and I had my headphones and I plugged them in and I would dial while it was ringing, dial the next number and just switch them. And I just did that over and over again. Now, granted, I'm financially independent. I'm a millionaire and I did all this. So why was I doing it that way? I had the money to hire a caller.
Right.
I had the money to hire a company to do marketing. And this is where I go back to, I could have really easy, and I did, but I quickly stopped it. I could have hired a company to market for me immediately.
Out of the gate before you even tried.
Yeah. But I was like, nope, I'm going to earn all of that. My first deal that I did doing that, I then hired a cold caller. I earned that 20%, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Well, plus you probably needed to tell them, hey, here's what they're going to say when they say this.
So I'm sitting there going back and forth, plugging in my phone, listening. I got my first deal out of calling like 500 people or whatever on 2 cell phones, got a cold caller. And then I realized like, okay, there's something here because people saw how I was doing it. I would do it on social media. Like literally I would go on Instagram Live and I would sit there and back and forth. People were like, what the heck is he doing? So I got my first deal. I got a cold caller. I partnered with a gentleman, Anton, Diego, and Adam. We started a company called REI Call Center where our callers will call for you to help you find off-market deals. So that's what REI Call Center is.
And they're crushing it, aren't they?
Killing it. Yeah, people
It's too hard to call that many people. I mean, so they pay a fee.
It's not sustainable.
And then and all of a sudden you've got people just pounding out thousands of calls a month for them and funneling it down. So they're dealing with the top of the funnel as opposed to, the callers are dealing with it rather than you as the investor. And I think that's a better way, especially because a lot of these guys have day jobs, they're out there doing. So how are they going to?
So what I tell people is basically look at your hourly rate, right?
Yeah.
So like,
what are you worth an hour?
What are you worth an hour, right? So our callers are $1,000 a month. So if it takes you a month to make $1,000, then don't hire us. Right. But if you make $1,000, let's say in a week, and you hire our guy, so you just traded 1 week for a month of work.
Yeah.
Or if you can make $1,000 in 2 days, you just traded 2 days for a month worth of work. So that's the way I tell people to look at it. And that's the way I look at it, right? So I'm like, okay, 5 hours, 2 hours is $1,000 for me based on my hourly rate, whatever the case may be. I'm going to give up 2 hours so somebody can work a month for me to find me deals. So for example, this year we did $500,000 wholesaling. We added about $600,000 of equity to our portfolio. I get to tap into about 70% of that with a line of credit, buy more real estate. I give people overseas jobs. They're in Egypt. They're awesome people. Their accent is amazing. It's top notch. I'm able to give them work. I'm able to provide a service to someone here in the States who's looking for off-market deals. And I'm able to build my net worth at the same time. So it's kind of a win-win.
That is literally the American way, the way you just literally described. I mean, because everything's not domestic. I mean, and if you can outsource, I mean, every company out there is outsourcing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if you can outsource and push your business forward, I think it's 1 + 1 = 3. So
there you go. And the last thing I'll say on that is like, it's kind of like when someone's like, oh, but $1,000 is a lot of money. I'm like, I get what you're saying. It is. Even to me, even still now, $1,000 is a lot of money. Monthly, that's a mortgage. The way I look at it, I tell people though, is like, what kind of blessing are you hiding from yourself? What kind of blessing are you hiding for somebody else? So for example, the blessing to somebody else, the cold callers living overseas in Egypt, right? Their country went through a revolution recently, a couple of years back. And there's a lot of really smart people that don't have jobs because the jobs aren't there. Our people are top-notch, graduate level, college degrees, the whole bit. And you're blocking a blessing from them. So that's one. Number two, I think you're also blocking a blessing from yourself by some of these deals coming in because you're being, back to what we said earlier, greedy. You don't want to spend $1,000, right? Where you're like, no, I can go work that. I'm like, okay, don't you have a family? Don't you have this, that, and a third? Why would you want to sit on the phone for 8 hours a day for a whole month over $1,000? What in your life are you saying no to over $1,000? So don't hide that blessing from yourself. Plus the blessing of getting, off-market opportunities, be able to continue to grow your wealth, the whole bit. So I tell people,
buying time back.
Oh, yeah,
you're buying time back, and that
full-time employee. And
it just really melds in with your entire philosophy and how it's all.
Yeah, it's all back to time. At the end of the day, I'm doing this for time with my family. I'm going to Mexico in December for like 3 weeks. I'm taking my whole family, right? I'm taking everyone.
Where are you going?
Cancun. Yeah, we're going to Cancun. I'm taking my mom, my sister, my nephew, my son, my wife, myself. There's like 8 or 9 of us going.
That's awesome.
We're going deep. So
that's great.
It's back to real estate.
Well, speaking of time, it is amazing when you're just having a blast. So I could sit here and talk for hours with Felipe. But guys, we have scratched the surface on a lot of things here. So it really just depends, no matter what level you're at right now, if you're a beginning investor, if you are someone who's been in it a while, but you're kind of get to the next level and blow up your business even more, Felipe is great in this regard. I mean, he is really help you blow up your business. So if you want to reach out to him, you've got his contact info below, but he's all over, Instagram. You've got his YouTube channel, over 4,000 subscribers, crushing it there. Super duper smart. I mean, here's a guy who used to write for Big Pockets. Yeah. So in the early years, right? And so
I was a host of one. Yeah,
he was one of the hosts of the podcast. So I feel very, very fortunate. I hope you know that to know him. And every time I bring his name up anywhere in town, in Nashville's still a small town. Don't you think?
Yeah,
I mean, if you grow up here, we still think it's a small town in the sense that if you're good at what you do, it gets out. If it's the other way, it gets out. And so I think that's the thing we're saying here. So align yourselves with the best, with the top-notch people that are out there. This guy is it. I want to thank you for being here,
Man,
especially in the holiday season. This podcast will come out in a couple of weeks, but we're gonna be seeing more of each other. We'll get this thing diced up, and we'll get everybody's audience showing. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Until next time, go all in. See ya.